What's up, guys? It is iPad day. We can talk about these a little bit more in depth than before. Yes, we have with us the iPad Pro M4 13-inch, 2 terabyte spec'd out. I've got the iPad Air 13-inch, 1 terabyte spec'd out. And I've got my older M1 iPad Pro 12.9-inch, 1 terabyte, pretty much spec'd out. So what I'm going to do is talk about this through the lens of a content creator, photographer, videographer, etc. I'm not going to go through all the specs. You've seen all those already from many different videos, and also Apple has it all on the website. But I'm going to talk to you about the performance and where I feel that it really shines. And there is a lot to be discovered because, well, we don't have all the new bells and whistles as of yet. With that said, I was flown out to the UK for the keynote. Big thanks to Apple for that. They were very, very kind to invite me to that. It was amazing. Battersea Power Station. We got to see the iPads, get hands-on time with them. I actually lost my voice during that trip, which was what a time to lose your voice. But anyway, I've got some more content about my journey coming out later on, but I want to focus on these right now and which one will be right for you based on your needs as a photographer or videographer. So with that, let's get down to it. Let's talk about the Pro first, because I think that's the one that's pretty exciting, being that it's the thinnest device that Apple has ever made, coming at 5.1 millimeters, and this is for the 13-inch. It is extremely thin. And you've been seeing other people online talking about it as well, but you actually have to get into your hands. I mean, go to the Apple store or whatever respective, consumer electronics store has these available when they come out, because to hold it and to see it are two different things. It really shows you the type of engineering and the amount of magic, you want to use that word, that they put into this. You've got a tandem OLED display, the first time they've ever put something like that into a device like this. Only the M4 chip could actually handle that. You've still got the same battery life as the older M2 iPad Pros and M1 iPad Pros respectively, but in a thinner device. It's still as rigid and still as durable, that's what they're saying, as the older iPads. And it's got a faster processor, better power management, and a device that's 5.1 millimeters thin. That to me is more impressive than actually the software itself, because the software, we haven't got hands-on time with the new Final Cut 2 and the new Logic Pro 2 for iPad or Procreate. All those were on display when we were at Battersea, but we don't have those for review yet. So it's hard for us to actually give you a gauge of what the M4 can do in the real world. Basically, we're just going to be using the standard iPadOS that everybody's using currently right now in the same software. So I'll talk about that in a second. But really, for me, the iPad Pro, this is a huge jump for Apple, and I'll tell you why. Because what this signifies is that they can make a device this thin and this powerful. It changes what we hold in our hands, this, or the laptops that we use, or the displays we use, or even the Mac Studio if they come out with another version of that. All these can become smaller, more compact, but yet more powerful. And that is the genius of what Apple's done with this. These M4 chips, based on the Geekbench scores, and I'll be showing you some of them here as well, I was reading online, some people are saying that it's the fastest consumer chip in the world currently. The fact that they released it into an iPad wasn't an oddity. What Apple's doing is they're making a statement to say, we can give you something so powerful and something so thin and so portable, this will shake up the entire PC industry. I mean, they're already shaking up with the M-series chips as it is. This changes it all together. That to me is probably the most interesting thing about the iPad Pro overall. Yes, the display is beautiful. We'll talk all about that in a second compared to these two, but it's just the engineering that went inside of this. This truly feels like,
and I don't want to sound like a marketing thing,
but it does truly feel like a magical device that you have so much power in something so thin. That's awesome. Okay, with that said, let's talk about the iPad Air, which I think 90% of people will probably go for if they want to get a new iPad, and I'll tell you why. It's an M2 chip, very powerful, still holds its own even to this day. Even though the M4 is more powerful, this is still very, very good, okay? And I did some tests to kind of compare the differences. This is still maybe 25% less power than this. And for the average person out there, unless you're rendering videos, you're not going to notice the difference. The display, while not as good as the tandem OLED display, doesn't have the ProMotion, it's still beautiful, bright, vibrant, still P3 color gamut. It still has those great Apple colors. And actually, if you put them side by side, just looking at them, there's not much of a discernible difference, at first glance. You really have to dive deep into these displays, but it's still a gorgeous display. It's still thin, what, 6 millimeters thereabouts. It is extremely thin, very robust. You got a single camera in the back of it. Some people say, oh, I want multiple cameras. Look, how many people actually use their cameras on their iPads? Maybe a fraction of you do, and the rest of you are using your iPhone or your smartphone for that, okay? This does not have Face ID, just Touch ID. Outside of that though, you got your 4 speakers on the side of this. It sounds great. The audio out of this is fantastic. Watching videos is great. There is no issues at all with this. And for 90% of you out there into photography and videography, I think you'll go for this and you'll be very, very happy. And I actually like the colors out of this. And I did talk to Apple about the colors because while they're a bit more muted, it's actually quite nice because you don't want something that's so bright and vibrant. It's cool at the beginning. They can get tiring to look at after a while and it becomes a bit stale and then you want to change colors. But when you have something a little bit more muted like this blues and purples that they were showcasing, these last a bit longer, my personal opinion, in terms of color preference. Anyway, the next one is the M1 iPad Pro. Many videos on that. Okay, so for photography, let's talk about that first and foremost. Is there going to be a difference between using an M1 to an M4? And the short answer is not really, and I'll tell you why. Right now, Adobe has not updated Lightroom, which I predominantly use for the iPads, and Photoshop. They haven't updated to really maximize the M4 yet, and they probably will in the coming weeks or months. As it stands right now, when you're editing images, and I'm talking 100 megapixel, 16-bit colors, Hasselblad, Fujifilm GFX 102, Hasselblad X2D, these kind of images, they fly on these. There's no issues at all with that. You use an M1 MacBook Pro, you know what I mean? It works well on that. It works well on these. No issues at all with that. There is no pen functionality even on the Apple Pencil Pro here. There's no squeeze functionality implemented into Lightroom or Photoshop yet, so we can't maximize that. So yeah, you're missing some of those features that will be coming, I'm sure, very, very soon. But editing, no issues at all. It's great. The one thing I will say to give the benefit to the iPad Pro is the colors, the display. Once again, this tandem OLED display, absolutely beautiful. The colors that come out of it, I mean, it's just so rich and so vibrant, especially when you shoot medium format and you're shooting true 16-bit color, you really see those images come alive here. So if you are a professional photographer and you want very good color accuracy, you want the best display possible to edit your photos, then you got to go iPad Pro, right? Hey guys, I just want to jump in here as I'm editing the video. I noticed something that I didn't mention in the initial description of the display, and that is there is a difference between the iPad Air and the iPad Pro. And there's a difference in colors that I think is worth noting, especially into photography and video as well. It's not a deal breaker, but just something to take notice here. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that with this model that I took a photo of in Germany. This was taken with the Leica SL3. Now, I am shooting this in 8K so you guys can see a higher resolution here. So as you can see here, I don't know if this is too blown out or not. This has more of a warmer tone to the face. You don't see so much magenta. There's a nice warm tone to the face overall, which looks really good. You don't get much of a magenta shift. So it kind of reminds me of, let's say, Nikon Leica colors per se, but when we go into the iPad Air, that's where you're gonna see a bit more of the magenta, kind of giving me more of that Canon vibe. But this has a bit more of a magenta shift to it. It's not a deal breaker, but just something to take note of though. If you are gonna be doing portrait photography or any sort of skin tones and you're working on that the OLED will give you a slightly different tone, a bit more orangish, a bit more warmer tones. This is a bit more of a magenta, more reddish tones to it. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, back to the review. If you're not saying you're a hobbyist, you're like, look, I just edit for a little bit of fun once I'm on a trip, once in a while. Yeah, maybe do a little bit of work, but I don't have the budget for the iPad Pro. The Air is gonna be more than adequate. Still P3 color gamut, liquid retina display, not XDR, no ProMotion to it, but it's still gonna give you fantastic colors. It's not like the older iPads don't work anymore. They do. This is just better because it's using OLED technology, better viewing angles, the colors, the blacks, everything is much more truer. And why I've enjoyed editing on this is that the blacks are true blacks. Even though it's really dark on this, it's a real true black. So you really get a good gauge of your color gamut and it does make a difference, especially when you're editing. Okay, now let's talk about video. Now, when we were in the UK, we saw the demo with the new Final Cut Pro 2 for iPad, right? And that looks awesome. From what I understand, they kind of built it from the ground up. So it's a much improved version of the current version that we have on the iPads now. And that really kind of ties into the neural engine of the M4 in terms of AI, in terms of the processing and what it can do. But we don't have it to test. So I'm only reliant on what the current version of Final Cut for iPad is. And as a result, you're seeing that it kind of levels the playing field at this point in time. What do I mean by that? Okay, I wanted to test with some more powerful, heavier video footage. So I actually used some test footage from a friend of mine, Peter Choi. He shot with the Red AKV Raptor. Now, these do not read our 3D files out of the gate. They just don't do that. So you're gonna have to use your desktop client to convert those and then export it out. Then you can put into a timeline and then you can edit from there. That's what I did. I used DaVinci Resolve on the M2 Max Studio that I have here. Just put into there, rendered it out 8K timeline, put into these. With that said, does it play an 8K timeline on Final Cut for the iPad in its current form? It does, but it stutters. There's a lot of drop frames, a lot. But it does play through it. And when you start throwing transitions and little title effects, it can slow things down a little bit. Whereas a desktop client, no issues at all with that. But when you come to rendering, that's when you see the difference. That's where you see the power of the M4 come into play. For example, this timeline I have here is an 8K timeline, put a little bit of transitions, some titles onto it, music as well, 42 seconds thereabouts, okay? I exported it, H.264 in 4K because you can't export in 8K currently with this version of Final Cut for the iPad. And the times were rendering 42 seconds from 8K to 4K, H.264, so there's some compression there, right? 1 minute, 20 seconds for that rendering time for the M4. For this, it was 1 minute and 48 seconds. And for the M1, it was 1 minute and 53 seconds. So you're seeing there's a little bit of a difference here. From M1 to M2, not so much. But from M4 to M1, that's like a 50% difference right there in terms of rendering time, and about 25% difference with the M2 to M4. And this is with Final Cut for iPad in its current form. Okay, it's not even with the new version, which I think will even enhance the M4 even more based on what I saw when I was in the UK. So that's to give you an idea. Obviously, Geekbench scores, I can show you what they look like here. The M4 is gonna trounce over everybody, and yeah, but Geekbench is Geekbench, real world is real world. And I like to use real world tests versus Geekbench because that gives you an idea of how the software works, applications work respectively. All right, with that said, that is sort of my testing that I've gotten so far. The M4, I'm absolutely loving it. Now let's talk about this, the Apple Pencil Pro, which to me is probably one of the most impressive items they launched that day because, you know, I used to draw and paint when I was younger, and I do once in a while. I still dabble a little bit with it. But drawing on a tablet was always something it always felt a bit foreign to me. You know, you don't get that pressure, you don't get that feel of a brush or a pencil if you want to get different curvatures to things, that kind of the subtlety that you get with a brush stroke or a charcoal stroke or a pencil stroke, respectively. That's changed now with this. This Pencil Pro makes working on an iPad feel very organic, almost like you're working on paper with a real pencil or a real piece of charcoal or even a brush. It's something that you have to try. And the fact they kept it at the same price as the standard Apple Pencil is nice that they did that. Now, I know some people are upset that why can't I use my older Apple Pencil with the new iPads respectively? I get you, I understand that. I'm here to talk about the performance of this. And it is friggin' amazing. For artists out there, even if you're editing photos and videos and you want a pencil, but you want that really finite touch, detail, pressure sensitivity, all that coming into play, this pencil will surprise you at how good it is. I mean, I know a lot of people like Wacom tablets and all those other kind of tablets. Apple's really coming to play ball with this, and they're coming in a big, big way. Now, we had Procreate on the demo tablets when we were in the UK. Unfortunately, we do not have that version of Procreate yet. It's coming out, I think they said later on this spring. You can see it in freeform. You can adjust the angle of the brush. You can do different things. The squeeze is nice because it adds another functionality to the menu. But yeah, you're kind of limited at what you can test it with at this point in time. So if you get the iPad in the next few days, it's going to be freeform pretty much. There'll be other apps coming out very shortly. Hopefully Procreate does come out in a quicker time frame, but this is friggin' impressive. Very, very impressive. All right, let's talk about the Magic Keyboards here. And the one to talk about is the one for the iPad Pro, because the same keyboard that's used on the new iPad Air is the same that was used on the older iPad Pros. So there's no difference in terms of features, how it works. It's exactly the same. All right, so let's move these two out of the way here and let's talk about that right now. All right, this has become the most laptop version of the Magic Keyboard we've seen to date. It's all aluminum. You've already heard this. You got the nice glass trackpad here, very sensitive, it's great. You got function buttons on this now. It locks in. It is absolutely awesome. And you know what's interesting? The one thing I realized about this is a 13-inch display, right? But you know, when you're using a laptop, because the laptop kind of comes out a bit further, you step farther away. This feels almost like you're using a 14-inch to 15-inch display because you're a lot closer to the iPad. It's just a visual thing, but that's something that I noticed, by the way. But anyway, just the way that it's designed, right? The way the keys light up, the touch sensitivity, it's like typing on a MacBook Pro, right? And you got the function buttons there. Everything's lit up well, evenly lit, looks fantastic. The aluminum feels awesome. This is essentially becoming a laptop. It really is. I mean, you are on the verge of saying, well, do I get a MacBook Air or do I get an iPad Pro? Now, obviously, when you get all these accessories, the iPad Pro becomes a little bit more expensive, but you have an M4 chip and obviously it's thinner and you can do touch with it as well, which you can't with the M3 Air. I digress. It's a really good experience. I wish this did tilt back a little bit further. I wish it had that. I mean, it's just kind of, you know, your viewing angle is a little bit limited. That'd be my only feedback on that. Otherwise though, absolutely love it. And when you do close it up, it is almost the same size as the other Magic Keyboards. This hinge on the back is metal now, where the other ones had a bit of a coating to it. You can obviously plug your USB-C port there. You have Thunderbolt 4 capabilities on the iPad, so you can plug it into a display if you want, like the other iPad Pros as well. So that's all there. But I have to say, this keyboard really just makes it so much more like a laptop than ever before. A lot of you will be deciding, do I go iPad Pro or do I go M3 Air or even base M3 Pro? So let's talk about that for a second here, because I think that will be a question a lot of you have. Is the iPad ready to be your only device? Look, we know WWDC is coming up in the next month, right? And they're going to be showing a lot more AI, language learning models. This is going to be a very significant WWDC. And I think we're going to see iPadOS graduate into a much more usable operating system for a variety of different things, very close to macOS. I mean, the question remains, is there even a need for iPadOS now? With these chips, with an M4 this powerful, do we even need iPadOS? Because it can handle pretty much anything a desktop could handle, right? So I wonder what Apple's going to do with that. And I would say, if you're looking to make it your desktop replacement or, laptop replacement, I would say wait for WWDC to see what they announce. If they decide to keep it as it is and just improve some of the apps, as powerful as this is, I wouldn't say it's a replacement for a laptop just yet. You got one Thunderbolt 4 port, obviously two if you use the Magic Keyboard, and you've got the pencil. So you've got some features there, but the versatility with apps, especially if you're into photography, if you're using Topaz Denoise or any sort of like Luminar, you don't have these apps available for the iPad yet. They're only for the desktop. Will they make it? Who knows? But these apps that a lot of photographers and even videographers use out there, your special videos, editing software, things that you do to sort of, create effects, you can't do that on this just yet. Now the software is getting much better, but it's not there yet. So as a content creator, I would say this can be a really nice piece to bring with you on the go, but as your only device, not yet. But we got to see what happens with iPadOS. And also we got to see how app developers come and embrace this new M4 chipset and the technology behind it. But if you're just one of these people who just browses the web, watches YouTube videos, Netflix, Disney Plus, sending out emails, pretty much you're doing most of your work on Microsoft Word or Chrome and using Google's, Docs and Sheets, et cetera, and you don't really dive into these kind of apps, yes, this can be a laptop replacement for you. It can be. And I would say you would be thrilled by the performance of this. And that really kind of cuts right into the M3 Air, MacBook Air family. And that's where this is going to get very interesting. And I think Apple's going to have to make some big decisions coming up, is how they're going to work in this realm, because the Air now is it's not considered the thinnest and lightest anymore. It's considered more the base model, so to speak. It's getting the technology from the Pro side coming down into a much more affordable, much more, consumer friendly price point and design, but still powerful. But this is going to be a challenge for a lot of MacBook Air users out there who just use web-based apps, who just do email, who just watch YouTube videos. Yeah, you can do some photo editing. Of course you can. You can do some video editing. You can do a lot. This is going to really give the M3 Air a run for its money. We'll probably find out more at WWDC. I think that pretty much wraps it up. I think that there's going to be a lot of people out there, some will probably be more negative than positive on these products, saying, well, it's just thinner and lighter. What's the big deal? I would say you need to look a little bit deeper into this. The fact, as I mentioned earlier in this video, what Apple's able to do with this device, a very powerful, the most powerful consumer chip currently on the market, in a device 5.1 millimeters thin, with great battery life, beautiful tandem OLED display. You can use the Apple Pencil Pro, and they're touting this is going to really work with AI and language learning models in a big, big way going forward. This is the starting point to the next generation of M series chips. We saw M1, M2, M3. M4 is that next leap ahead. This is a statement piece. And that's why it's very, very important for the industry. Don't think about size. Think about what you can put in something like that. And that's something that Apple's been doing for years, and they've done it very well. And this is a testament to that. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on the iPad Pro, iPad Air. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you have any questions, hit me up. As more apps come out, as more Pro apps come out, I will be doing follow-ups with this to really show you the power of the performance of the Pro and the Air next to each other. But as it is right now, we're somewhat limited, as you kind of discovered and probably watched other videos as well. So these are just my initial thoughts. Testing it for a few days. I can't wait to dive into it more. Okay, guys, with that, take care, stay safe, and I will chat to you soon.